Hello and welcome to the DSR Daily. I'm your host for today, Riley Fessler, joined by Minna Stein. How are you today, Minna?
I'm well. How are you?
Not too bad. We've got some interesting stories today, so I'll just dive right in.
Mhm.
Lieutenant General Igor Kirillov, head of Russia's nuclear, biological, and chemical defense forces, was killed in an explosion in Moscow, reportedly orchestrated by Ukrainian intelligence operatives. The bomb, hidden in a scooter outside a building, also claimed the life of Kirillov's assistant. Kirillov, the highest-ranking Russian officer to be assassinated since the February 2022 invasion of Ukraine, has been accused by Ukraine's SBU of overseeing the use of chemical weapons against Ukrainian forces. The Kremlin has yet to officially comment, but Dmitry Medvedev vowed inevitable retribution for Ukraine's leadership. Kirillov, who led the development of flamethrower systems and played a role in Russia's pandemic response, was sanctioned by Western nations for allegedly deploying toxic agents during the war, accusations Moscow denies. Not a lot to add here. Sounds like a pretty horrible person. I'm surprised this is the highest ranking official to be assassinated because I seem to remember generals being killed in the conflict, but maybe they're classifying those as battlefield casualties, whereas this is an assassination. Not really sure, but this conflict just grinds on. I feel like we kind of go periods without talking about it, but it nonetheless continues to just kind of keep going in the background. With the new administration coming up and Trump's pledge to end the conflict quickly, we'll see if he can actually make good on that promise and what that looks like. But Ukraine does not seem to be letting up in the meantime.
Mm-hmm. Well, sticking with some Russia-related news, Bashar Al Assad, the ousted Syrian dictator, stated in his first statement since leaving the country that his departure from Syria was not planned and came only after rebel forces entered Damascus on December 8th. Assad claims he had not stayed in the capital until that. Assad claimed he had stayed in the capital until that day, when he coordinated with Russian allies and moved, eventually seeking evacuation after his forces completely withdrew. He maintained that he had not considered stepping down until the situation became dire, and his evacuation was prompted by intensified drone strikes on his position at a Syrian airbase. As Assad's regime fell, Syrians celebrated the release of thousands of prisoners, while rebel groups vowed to rebuild Syria with a more inclusive vision. So, the ousted dictator telling his side of the story. I don't think that Syrians really care that much as long as he's gone, why he left or when, but he is speaking out for the first time since Russia took him in.
Seems to be mostly for his own ego, more than anything, because he's done. He's not coming back anywhere.
No.
He's just going to, I would assume, live out his life in exile if he's not assassinated prematurely. On December 16th, a New York judge rejected Donald Trump's attempt to overturn his criminal conviction for falsifying business records related to a $130,000 hush money payment to adult film star Stormy Daniels, despite Trump's claims of presidential immunity under a recent U.S. Supreme Court ruling. Justice Juan Merchan ruled that Trump's actions were decidedly personal and not protected as official presidential acts, as the case involved covering up payments before the 2016 election. Trump's lawyers argued the conviction hampers his ability to govern following his victory in the election, while Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg maintains the case falls outside the scope of the Supreme Court's immunity decision. Sentencing has been postponed indefinitely as additional motions await Merchan's ruling. Well, no matter what, he's not really going to face consequences for this, right? It doesn't really matter if it falls outside of the immunity because he's going to be president before he will face a consequence, in which case I assume he can pardon himself or find other ways to avoid punishment. So, I don't know. I mean, it's a victory, I guess, but it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. It's nice that the justice system still holds, and this ridiculous claim that this was presidential immunity for actions before he was president was tossed aside, because that is obviously patently ridiculous, and we're going to see equally stupid arguments over the next 4 years to try and defend the incredibly dumb things that Trump will undoubtedly try and do.
For sure. At his final Hanukkah reception as president, Joe Biden reaffirmed his ironclad support for Israel and vowed to bring all hostages taken during the October 7th attack home. Reflecting on the trauma of the attack, which left over 1,000 dead and hundreds kidnapped, Biden stated that he had already secured the release of over 100 hostages and was committed to ensuring every single one returned. He also condemned the rise of anti-Semitism both in the U.S. and worldwide, emphasizing his unwavering commitment to the safety of the Jewish people and Israel's right to exist. In a personal moment, Biden recalled taking his grandchildren to the Holocaust memorials in Europe to teach them about the horrors of the past, reaffirming his identity as a Zionist. So it will be interesting to see how things change with the new administration. It seems like already a lot of support for Israel coming out of this administration, but we'll see what the next one looks like.
I mean, you got to at least give Biden credit for sticking to his guns, even though I think he was just patently wrong, and this is the wrong approach for this entire conflict. And, he seems like he has never changed course at all. So, I mean, I guess he's at least doing what he believes, even if it may or may not have cost the election. I don't think this was the issue that really cost Kamala Harris the election, to be honest, but it certainly did not help. Yeah. But beyond the election, I think the continued U.S. support for Israel is just the wrong thing to do, full stop, in this conflict. So, I think Biden has had difficulty walking the line of believing that Israel should exist, but understanding that not everything Israel does is justified. I understand the initial support, but I think, after it became kind of clear what the strategy was on Israel's part in dealing with this conflict, it became the wrong thing to do, especially by continuing to provide arms. But nonetheless, it's going to be worse under Trump, so it doesn't really matter what Biden did. It's too late now, unfortunately.
Yep.
Well, looking to our neighbors in the north, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's government plunged into turmoil after Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland abruptly resigned, citing disagreements over Trudeau's handling of U.S. President-elect Donald Trump's tariff threats. Freeland, a key ally and deputy prime minister, criticized Trudeau's costly political gimmicks in response to Trump's vow of a 25% levy on Canadian imports unless border security improves. Her departure, alongside a Liberal by-election loss in British Columbia, intensified calls from within Trudeau's party and opposition leaders for him to resign. Freeland's exit reflects broader divisions over whether to confront or appease Trump, whose return has reignited trade anxieties. With Trudeau's approval ratings at record lows and a federal election looming, the Liberal Party faces mounting internal and external pressure to stabilize leadership and address economic uncertainty. It's, this is going to be an issue for a lot of countries as they try and figure out how to deal with Trump again. Mexico has already been facing difficulties. Canada, no doubt, another target, and just around the world, this is going to be a challenge for leaders. And we already see that they're facing consequences for an election that had nothing to do with them. So I'm sure Trudeau is quite frustrated, but, that being said, that's not his only issue. He's certainly faced numerous controversies and issues at home without the help of Donald Trump. So it seems to just be kind of another domino to fall for him.
This and being called the governor of Canada.
Yeah, that certainly didn't help either.
No, I'd say not.
Well, that is all we have today, but we've got more shows this week. As a reminder, we will not be making new shows next week through the new year, through New Year's Day, that is. So we will be doing a kind of best of DSR from the year. We'll be doing that across all our shows. So there'll still be stuff to listen to, a nice look back at the year. But until tomorrow, bye-bye.